welcome back to the Super Centex Podcast. With me, as always, are DJ Ramirez, right down there on my screen, Chad Conine over here, and an old friend, David.
The greatness of.
We'll do what?
I said the greatness of.
The greatness of. We always used to call him David G. Campbell because of another famous Dave Campbell in Waco.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but Dave, good to have you on, my friend.
I appreciate that, but I want to get back to Chad. I like his introductions better.
The greatness of. That's pretty good.
David, what was it like to work in Waco and call people and say, "Hi, this is David Campbell"?
It really wasn't all that hard. Like, I got asked a lot, "Are you related to Dave Campbell?" and stuff like that. That was the weirdest thing was when I would get a call from Dave. And I would get him on my cell phone, and you would see Dave Campbell on my cell phone, and I'd say, "Hello, Mr. Campbell," and he would always say, "Hello, Mr. Campbell," and nobody ever called him Mr. Campbell, but it was kind of a cool back and forth, and I just
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I just kind of love that, and great respect for the other Dave Campbell now, and I just absolutely love Dave.
Well, with Dave being on the podcast this week, I'm not sure I thought this completely through, but the Astros Rangers fans are split because DJ and I are supporting the Stros, and of course Dave's is a Rangers fan, along with Dad.
At least something is split.
Shut up! Screw you. Let's
comment.
Let's get talking about.
I will say this, as a Ranger fan, since the day they got to Arlington, I am not foolish enough to jump out on that limb and assume that the Rangers have anything won at this point against the Astros.
They're never going to lose again. The Rangers are never going to lose again.
That's could be your greatest prediction of all time. I hope you're right.
And whoever wins, look out for the Phillies. I mean,
I don't know why you're wearing a Phillies cap, but okay.
I went to visit my cousin in Philadelphia this summer and went to a Phillies game. I also saw the Rangers beat the Phillies on opening day this year.
All right, so speaking of baseball, this is going to be a segue. I want to start by talking about Cash Davis McCollum. As DJ wrote last year in a feature story, his middle name is Davis because his dad in particular was a Bull Durham fan and liked the name Crash Davis. And so, Davis became Cash's middle name, but I personally think you could call him Cash Money because that's what he's been for China Spring for the last, season and a half, almost 2 seasons. This year, he has almost 2,300 yards passing, 35 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions on the season. Of course, he's coming off a 7-touchdown effort, 6 passing, 1 rushing last week against Vega.
What a game that was last week.
Yeah, no kidding. So here's how hard it is to win Super Centex Offensive Player of the Year twice. It's only been done once. That was John Henry, the great John Henry, who's in the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame at Lorena back in 88 and 89. So what do you think the chances are that our boy Cash can cash in and win it again?
Well, let me chime in first since I covered the game on Friday, and I have him at 21 of 29 for 372 passing yards. Obviously, the 6 touchdowns, and then the game winner using his legs. He also had 4 receivers that caught at least 4 passes, which is pretty impressive. And I think the thing that's happening with the China Spring offense is that they're figuring each other out. They're familiarizing themselves. Cash has learned who he can trust, who to look for. The offensive line is giving him more protection. I mean, those big numbers he put up the other day, he put up against Vega, a pretty traditionally a pretty good defensive program. So, and I tell you what he did. He threw to guys that were wide open a couple of times, like wide open, right? But he also laid a ball in like right where it had to be, like, put it on a guy who had a guy on him, and that guy ended up scoring. So doing it all kinds of ways. And given the trajectory, I mean, Stephenville is going to be a tough game on Friday. But
Thursday.
Thursday, right. But they're clicking. And then you get into the rest of the season, the first few rounds of the playoffs. He's already Central Texas leading passer. I mean, Kiefer Sibley has to look at Cash as the man to beat in terms of offensive player of the year.
Yeah,
but right now, Cash is the man to beat.
And I would say a dark horse in this race is actually Braylon Henry of Lorena, who's really turned it on in the last, 4 or 5 weeks, and among Central Texas's leading rusher, but he is obviously the son of John Henry, so that's kind of neat.
I got a chance to see John Henry play one time in high school, and it was in the state championship game, and it was the guy lived up to all billing. He was a tremendous player, and it was an easy guy to follow too. I was covering sports back in those days, and I didn't, even though I didn't get to a lot of John's games, I got to see him in that state championship game. Was not even covering it. I was sitting in the stands at Memorial Stadium and watched that game. It was a great game. If you get into that kind of category, you're doing pretty well. That's very, very impressive stuff.
Yeah, we've said before here on the pod that I think North Texas is going to get a pretty good quarterback, and that's where Cash McCollum is going. DJ, I mean, what do you think? What makes Cash so good? You've seen him play.
Yeah, I mean, and not just this season, even from back last year when I got to talk to him at the beginning of the year and at the end of the season for that offensive player feature. But he's just a kid that cares about his teammates, and like coming in from Waverly, like his mentality wasn't, oh, I'm going to be the starting quarterback, right? He came in, he earned the job, he made relationships. Talking to Coach Beatty this year and about the fact that he's got so many people to throw to and just, options and different ways to win the game. It's really just Cash stepping up, and like he hangs out with all his receivers all the time, all his teammates all the time. They're always practicing, and he's really stepped up in the leadership aspect this season, I think, which has helped when he's on the field, really dictating the way the game is going.
You might have a chance to have a Trib for a second here, because you'd be the person who did the offensive player of the year 2 years in a row. Nobody else. It's only been done once before, right?
Yeah.
And we don't even know for sure that the same person wrote the story at that time.
That's true.
So.
That's true. That's well.
I could go to the library and look that up.
Yeah, we probably could. I bet it was Mickey Humphrey, but
probably.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's another big name that Cash can, be in that same category with. With that performance against La Vega, he became China Springs' all-time touchdown pass leader, passing Shawn Bell.
Whatever happened to that guy?
Yeah. He's coaching at Baylor now, as is Brian Bell. So yeah, I mean, anytime you can do that and knock a Bell off of a list at China Spring, that's pretty good.
It just occurred to me that Mark Bell is the weak link in that family now.
Oh, ouch!
No, it's just
you said it. You said it.
I actually sat when you gave me some tickets to a high school banquet a couple of years ago. I sat with Mark Bell, and it was fun catching up.
Nice. Well, another big name is a guy by the name of Quan Cosby at Mart. So he did not win Offensive Player of the Year twice, easily could have, but he did win Offensive Player of the Year 1 year and Defensive Player of the Year the next year. That was amazing. That was how good Quan Cosby was at Mart. Dave, you got a chance to see him and play. I mean, where does Quan rank among, some of the better players you've been able to cover?
Probably he'd be number one as far as covering. I always said that he was, I played with Raymond Rhodes at Mahia when we were in high school, and Raymond Rhodes was Quan Cosby 30 years before Quan Cosby came in, stepped on a football field. They were both so good on both sides of the ball. You could build a cage around either one of those guys and make it a really small cage, and they got out of it somehow.
Yeah,
I don't know how they did it. Not to mention, they would probably, the rules being what they are in football today, they would probably stop the game and change the rules because those guys hit so hard on defense. I mean, my gosh. And Quan would come up from the safety position, and you could see it coming. I mean, you knew it was about to happen. And guys, their knees would just buckle when he hit them. My gosh, he was a great player, just a great player. I'll tell you one other thing I want to say about Quan. He was so far ahead of his time as far as the people, how he dealt with people, because after the game, everybody wanted to talk to him, and it was like he was a celebrity, and he handled that better than anybody at the high school level that I've probably ever known. Ever.
Yeah.
He was great.
Yeah. You know, you remember we had that's 50-year Super Centex banquet,
Right.
and we named an all-time Super Centex team, which was a lot of fun putting that together. And Quan was on that team, on that list, and he was still young at the time, but I just remember him being real respectful of all the guys that were there and just, you know, honored to be there. And I was thinking, dude, you belong, you know, I mean,
yeah. Well,
for sure.
I don't want to just limit it to Quan when you asked me who some of the best players I ever saw, and Raymond was spectacular. And I know that was well before y'all's time, but he was an amazing player, and he obviously played in the pros and coached in the pros. But it would be absolutely insane not to have a team that had Lewis Fight on it. He was on that team as well. He was one of the best running backs I've ever seen, and LaDainian Tomlinson, who was a completely different type runner. I got a great LaDainian story about them playing at old Tyson Stadium, and they were playing. He comes in the hole. They're playing Smithson Valley, I believe. And Smithson Valley had an all-state linebacker, and he lines up and he hits LaDainian right in the thighs. I mean, he comes up and just boom, just blasts him. And LaDainian ran 80 yards for a touchdown. So we have had some incredible players to cover, and Quan is right at the top of that group of people.
Yeah, and another one, I've always said he's one of the best that I've ever seen. That 2002 season, Jordan Parkus at Rosebud Lot. Never did anything in college because he didn't end up. He was, they were late recruiting him. Everyone was. Ended up going to A&M as a student, but man, great player, great high school player at Rosebud Lot, and led them to their only state championship.
He was really on the cutting edge of that spread offense that everybody was just beginning to institute at the time, and they were really good, really good.
So another legendary name in Central Texas is the name David Haynes. David Haynes Sr. Was one of McGregor's finest football players back in the early 80s. And he also later was the Bulldogs coach. And then, of course, there's David Jr., David Haynes Jr., who was a Super Centex standout at McGregor. Really great all-around athlete. That was the early 2000s, and now is the head coach of the Whitney Wildcats. And, of course, his son, David Haynes III, as DJ knows, they call him Trey. So, he's our reigning Super Centex Defensive Player of the Year. It's rare that we have both of those guys coming back, offense and defense. But so these are really high times at Whitney. This is a program that historically hasn't had a lot of great seasons. So it's kind of a two-part question here. Do you guys think that the Wildcats can beat out Grandview, win that district, and just how far is this team capable of going in the playoffs? What do you think?
I haven't seen Grandview yet. I will this weekend when I go up to West. But I have seen Whitney, and I think, they're, despite the fact that they're 7-0, I feel like there's not enough buzz around them. Like, I feel like we haven't talked to them about them enough, or that we haven't heard other people talk about them enough. I mean, it's not just Trey. They've got a great quarterback in Mason Seeley. He also threw for 7 touchdowns this past weekend. They have a great receiver in Jared Anderson, who stepped in at quarterback 2 weeks ago when Seeley was sick and threw for like over 200 yards and ran the ball. So, not to mention just a plethora of talent around them. And on defense, Tegan Winkler is another one of those guys on defense that really just puts in really hard work. And I'll have to get back to you on if they can beat Grandview after I see them play West.
That's fair.
Yeah. But I do think that Whitney's got a chance to make a really deep run in the playoffs this
I know
year.
they were playing one of those Dallas charter schools last week or whatever, but 85 points is 85 points. They put up 85 points last week.
They would have
Chad,
stopped a 6-man game.
yeah,
it'd have been
it
over.
would have been stopped. Exactly. Some of those 11-man games need a mercy rule. Chad, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to use this opportunity to talk a little bit about football culture, because the kids that are on varsity, aside from Trey Haynes, who moved in, they were at Valley Mills for a year. I think they were in Marlin for a year and then Valley Mills for a year, and now they're at Whitney in his second year there. But the other kids on the team, they were in probably middle school in 2019 when Whitney went 11-2, and they saw that, right? And that had to stick in their heads a little bit. Like this is what's possible here. Because like you said, before in 2019, Whitney had kind of they'd been in the desert for a while. If I remember correctly.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, there's some really good high school football history sites out there. We'll plug a few of those. Of course, Jerry Forrest is probably one of the most famous ones. Pigskin Prep. He's been a nominee, Chad, for the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame for a few years now. I think he'll get voted in eventually. But there's another one called Texas High School Football History.com, and I looked this up. Whitney, from 91 to 2003, so Dave can remember this, they lost 67 straight district games.
Yeah, they were bad.
They were bad. And I can remember when I was kind of coming up with this question, I was thinking, that 2003 team was really good. I remember Paul Hurst coming in and kind of giving them some hope. Matt Hurst was the quarterback. Of course, Matt Hurst is now the coach at Moody. And I looked that up. You know what they were in 2003? They were 6-5. They made the playoffs. They were 6-5. But that was what it meant, just to have a team that was 6-5. I think they might have won the Jinx Tucker trophy that year. I'm not sure, but that's how bad it had been at Whitney. Now, as Chad said, they have had some seasons, the 11-2 season a couple years ago under Mark Bird. And then back in 2014, they were 10-2 under Kenneth Gilchrist. So they've had, these blips on the radar. But
didn't have a great Thanksgiving weekend game that year against Troy.
Yes, I covered that game.
Yeah, I thought so.
Cooper and I were at that game. Yeah. Zach Herbachick versus was it Marcus Wilson, the Whitney kid? That was fun. Dave, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say Whitney also, when they built that new, when they did their new stadium and built the new press box, I always think that if you build a really nice press box for us, that you'll get good. So everybody should keep that in mind.
That is such a good comment. Take note of that.
Just something to keep in mind for
absolutely.
If we're happy, you're probably going to be good. Right. We'll say this: I covered David Haynes when he was in high school. He was a great player. McGregor had great teams back in those days, and so he was. I follow David Haynes Jr. on what used to be Twitter, and I don't follow Trey, so I got a little catching up to do from that standpoint. But getting back to your original question, you're going to ask about the chances of beating Grandview. Grandview's been good for a while. That their only loss this year. I mean, you can talk about 7-0 in Whitney, and well, you should. But their only loss at Grandview was to Malakoff, and they play Malakoff every year, whether it's in district, whether it's in non-district, whether it's in the state championship game. They play them every year, and losing to Malakoff, there's going to be a whole lot of teams that lose to Malakoff the rest of this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'll also say West has shown the path to victory against Grandview for Whitney because. Did they beat him the last 2 years, Chad? Yeah. So the Zebras are, they're not unbeatable, and it'll be interesting to see West and Grandview this week, as DJ said. But I like what David Jr. is doing there at Whitney. I think 8-4 last year, obviously undefeated this season. And again, they haven't had a lot of double-digit win seasons out there at Whitney, and I think they're going to at least get to that and, certainly have the chance to play past Thanksgiving. So
he's not the last Haynes. Trey's not the last Haynes that's going to be playing football.
Oh, okay. Is there a younger brother?
He's got a younger brother who's currently, I think, a freshman. So
wow, good.
Nice. Those Haynes just keep on coming. So let's circle back to some 6A football. One of the reasons I had Dave on, but not the only reason, of course. So Midway, as we talked about last week and as we predicted, did get to 3-1 in district. They beat Cove pretty easily, 45-21. Really wasn't even that close. Cove scored some garbage time touchdowns, but the Panthers will travel to Merrill Green Stadium this week in Bryan to face the Bryan Vikings, a game that will feature the voice of the Vikings, David Campbell. So like
Woo-hoo.
Midway, the Vikings have been better in district than they have been in non-district. They are 2-1. And of course, Midway's 3-1. So, how do you guys we'll start with you, Dave. How do you see this one kind of playing out?
Bryan beat Copper's Cove in overtime, and it was that kind of game. So, but one thing I've really learned about this district this year is that 12-6A is if you start doing those comparative scores, you're going to be wrong because it just doesn't work, and it really probably doesn't work anywhere, but it doesn't work in this district for sure. Bryan did not play well against Weiss on last Thursday. And yet they were kind of in the game a lot longer than that 42-13 score indicated. They had a lot of opportunities in the first half to get back in the game. And then to begin the second half, their defense played pretty well and had an opportunity. And then it finally got out of hand. Weiss is a pretty good team. They're 8-0 as well. I really think if you look at it, you'd have to think that Midway's at least a small favorite in this game. I mean, I just can't imagine how you would look at it any other way. But Bryan is, when they've been good, they've been really good. And they were really good against Temple. They were really good. They began to turn things around when they put Boone Turner in at quarterback. They've got two good quarterbacks, but he was a transfer kid that came in, same situation that Midway's got there. And Boone's done a great job. He's done an outstanding job leading that team. If I had to give Bryan an edge somewhere, it's a real sort of a provisional edge for Bryan, because Isaiah Nuttall, their running back, when that guy is going, everything works better for Bryan. And he didn't have much of a game against Weiss. Started the season a little slowly because he just didn't have that right body lean for a big guy, which he's a big, strong guy. But if he plays well, I think everything Bryan does is going to work better. I think that'll be a very competitive ball game, and been good crowds for Bryan at home all season long. So I think that could be a factor in the game as well. But Midway travels well.
Yeah.
Those insights are fantastic, but what really strikes me is just the broadcast professionalism that Dave brings to the table for us here.
Okay. Keep talking. You got more?
I mean, short and sweet, right? Just simple. That's all I need to say. Just the level, like the sound of your voice is, first of all, you have a radio voice and you have your mic properly.
There's a lot of sucking up going on here. Chad, do you think, have you been impressed with what Midway has done these last 2 weeks? I know these are teams we kind of expected them to beat in Temple and Temple's down, but
I mean, to me, following Midway these days is just like hearing rumors on the wind. That's all I get, because
I'll let you cover them at some point. I'll let you cover them at some point.
I hadn't covered a Midway game since the Permian game last year.
Maybe I'll let you cover them against Weiss and
it's about to go low, and I may cut off on you here in a moment. So if I lose you, it's not that I meant to do it. I just forgot to charge my computer, so I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Well, right after I talked about your broadcast professionalism, you're gonna
I'm out of luck. Just
DJ, you're writing about Jackson Baird, and of course I've sung his praises here on the pod this week, but he's been a huge addition for the Panthers.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to talk to him later today. And I mean, what's impressive is just that he's a baseball kid who was playing football in high school for the first time as a senior. And I mean, I feel like that just really proves that baseball is the superior sport, because
Oh, ouch.
you can step onto a football field and do things on a football field that football players stepping onto a baseball field can't do. So, but no,
I'm not going to say it's not hard to hit a fastball. That is hard to do.
Yeah. No, when I saw Midway play a few weeks ago, and it was just one of those games where I was having a hard time paying attention because nothing was going on. And their O-line was just really disappointing. But I feel like since then they've really started to turn things around, and might see Midway in the playoffs. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're in great shape.
They'd almost clinch, I think, if they won this. This would be very close.
Yeah, absolutely. So
except for a mistake in geography on DJ's point about baseball players playing football, except for a mistake in geography or fate, I think Yordan Alvarez would have made a great rush in.
Well, you're going off the rails now.
We're talking about baseball players playing football. I mean, if that guy could hit a running back the way he hits a baseball,
I'd like to encourage him to get into that before tonight's game.
Yeah, so I'll be at Bryan this week for the Midway-Bryan game, and as Dave said, I do expect it to be a competitive game, but Midway, I would give Midway a little bit of an edge. Partially, it's the Ty Brown factor. I just feel like he's such a difference maker for them. And they're playing loose. They're playing fun right now. I saw a video on Twitter or X or whatever earlier this week where a couple of the Midway coaches were having a dance off. So they're looking like they're having a lot of fun over there at Midway, which good for the Panthers. It's been I would say a rough few weeks, but they've handled the distractions really well. So should be a fun game at Merrill Green. I'm looking forward to seeing my friend David Campbell, and thanks for hopping on with us this week.
My pleasure. I'm just about to go dead on this computer. So thank you guys. It's
all right.
it's
See
fun.
y'all
Anytime.
See you at the games.
Bye.